All right, everyone, welcome back to another live episode of the Relevant Recruiter Show. I'm your host, Donnie Gupton, and today I have the privilege of hosting Gary Stauble. Gary is a powerhouse in the recruiting industry and the mastermind behind the Recruiting Lab. Gary is a trusted consultant to some of the most successful recruiting firms, helping them maximize profitability and streamline operations. And with decades of experience in the space, he's developed actionable strategies that deliver real results, transforming agencies and how they operate and thrive. And one of the things that we're going to dig into is one of Gary's passion, and he's really known for his relentless focus on quality and efficiency when it comes to clients and getting new searches. So Gary's going to share insights on how to be ruthless about search quality. And this is something that can really elevate your game as a recruiter and as a recruiting firm owner. You can learn more about Gary at the recruitinglab.com. And if you hang around at the end, Gary's got a special offer he's going to drop for you here today. So Gary, after that long-winded introduction, welcome to the show and thank you for being here.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it and very glad to be here.
Yeah. And for those of you that are with us live, if you can go in the comments, let us know where you're at, what industry you focus on. We would appreciate that. And if you have any questions, you want to pick Gary's brain at any time in this podcast, go ahead and drop them in the chat and I will get to them if I can. But Gary, let's just start with kind of the brief overview. It's one of my favorite questions because it's never the same and nobody ever went to college for it. So how the heck did you get into the recruiting industry?
Yeah, that's true. Nobody went to college for this. I actually, this was a long time ago in the mid 90s, and I was in a rock band actually in Silicon Valley, had just graduated from college, had dreams of becoming a big rock star. And so I went to Los Angeles, moved from Silicon Valley to Los Angeles with my band. Don't tell anybody, but I was literally living in a van in West Los Angeles. And
Down by a river or?
Not down by a river. No. But it was in front of a methadone clinic, which was fun. In the middle of the night, we had these methadone addicts walking past my van, and it was like Night of the Living Dead. So it was an interesting time, and I needed a job. I had just graduated from college and applied for a bunch, and one of them was a recruiting firm. And luckily, they took a chance on me because I had long hair and wasn't really the prototypical. It was a very buttoned up firm in Los Angeles where you had to wear a suit and a tie every day. So it was a big change. But once I got going, things took off. And so that's kind of how I got into it.
Nice. And thank you for those that have commented. Christy, Anthony, John, Aaron, Montes, Amber, Stacy, Marco, Larry, thank you for being here with us today from all over the place. We got Texas, Chicago, Indiana, Toronto, Bentonville, Arkansas, Scottsdale, Arizona. So thanks for being here, and we have a lot of fun. So we're going to dive in right into the topic. No fluff today, just right into it. So, Gary, why do you believe so many recruiters struggle with maintaining high search quality?
I think it's almost like a form of PTSD. It's almost like with a child. This is going to sound a little extreme, but a child who gets beaten by their father, and then when you try to talk to them about it, and they say, "Well, Daddy only hits me when he gets angry, and it's me that makes him angry." It's almost, I know that sounds absurd, but it's almost like that. I feel like it's PTSD because, particularly, I'm talking about contingency, right? Retained is a little different, but on contingency, you're not getting paid unless you close the deal. You've got other people competing with you. Maybe the client, is keeping you at arm's length. Maybe you're stuck in human resources. So it creates this insecurity because I can't rely upon the fact that I'm going to get paid, and I need to sort of please my clients. I need to kind of be overly accessible to them in a customer service, sort of almost like a customer service rep as opposed to a management consultant. And so it's really a mind shift of saying, do I want to just be perceived as a salesperson? Do I want to just be perceived as a low-level order taker? Or do I have some real value to share with people? And if I have value to share with people, oftentimes that's telling them things that they don't want to hear. So like my coaching clients know, I'm going to tell them the things that they need to hear, not the things that they want to hear. And, that's what they're coming to me for. And I sometimes give the analogy of like, if you wanted to get your lawn mowed, let's say you were going to give out a contract for somebody to mow your lawn every week, right? So let's say you went to a bunch of teenagers and you gather up 4 teenagers in your neighborhood and you say, listen, I'm going to give this contract, this weekly contract to mow my lawn to one of you. But what I want you to do is work for free, and you're going to mow the entire lawn, front, back, edge, rake it up, do all that stuff. I'm not going to pay you. But in the end, after 4 weeks of trying you guys out, I'll pick one of you and I'll pay you. So there's a 75% chance you're not going to get paid, but I want you to mow my lawn. And the question is, how many 13-year-old boys could you get to take you up on that offer? And my guess is it's zero or very few, right?
Right.
So I say that as a mind shift, because if you're working on contingency, you're working on the exact same arrangement that I just described that I couldn't get a 13-year-old to work to mow my lawn, right?
Right.
There's more nuance to it than that, but I feel like we need to start with that as our set point and then decide what kind of approach do I want to have.
Right.
Yeah, so I could go on and on and on
Yeah.
because I've taught this class
Well, how
many
do
times.
you,
But
if we were to kind of, and I know this is kind of a tough one, but how would you quantify, like, well, what is a good search? What should I be looking for?
yeah, that's a great question. So there's different ways you could have criteria for that. Probably the simplest is A, B, and C. So everybody has probably heard that. Is it an A level search? Is it a B level search? But I want to make everything operational and into a formula so that you can execute it. So there's no thinking. So let's be a little more specific. What is an A level search? Let's just say it has three things: cooperation, urgency, and it's marketable. Right. So if it's cooperation, that means in an ideal world, you've got direct hiring authority contact. They return your calls promptly. They see you as a partner, not as a pest. And they're open with you. They're excited to work with you. That's the best of all worlds.
Right.
Don't always get that, but that would be cooperation. Urgency is number one. You could, if you want to just shorten the list, it would be number one, urgency, number two, urgency, and number three, urgency. You know what I mean? Like urgency is the most important. And then marketable. Is there somebody who would be interested in that? so,
Right.
so that's an A. What is a B? A B is missing one of those three, and a C is missing two of the three or more. And then the part that makes it operational is, well, what am I going to do differently? How do I act differently in my day to day? So let's say for an A level search, I'm going to do original research plus a database search. So it's worthwhile to spend more time on it because it's an A. So I'm going to start
Right.
with the closest thing. I'm going to start with my LinkedIn contacts. I'm going to start with my database. If I run out of people there, then I'm going to expand beyond that. I'm going to do original research. I'm going to go out and actually hunt for somebody.
Right.
A B level search, I'm going to skip the original research. I'm only going to do the internal search. So I'll check my database. I will check LinkedIn, and that's about it. A C level search, I won't do either, but I will keep it in mind. And the other part that I think weaponizes the whole thing is to be honest with your clients about that. So if somebody is a B level client, don't lie to them and pretend that you're going to treat them like an A level client. Tell the truth
Right.
and tell them how they could get at the top of your priority list.
Right.
So a lot of best practices in recruiting, I feel like I'm always coming back to the same thing, which is tell the truth. Tell the truth about what you're feeling, because here's a scenario that I hear all the time from my coaching clients. They'll say, there was a search that I'm working on. It was excellent.
Uh-oh. Did we lose Gary? Gary, are you with me? All right. We will, I'll keep you entertained here for a minute while hopefully Gary gets back online with the technical challenge that he's facing right now. We have 70 people here right now, so hang in there with us. If you are enjoying what Gary has to say so far, if you're enjoying this topic, go in the comments, let us know, give it a little like and a love. Let me know where you're at. Yeah, we lost Gary. Cool. So we'll get him back here in a second. I'm sure he'll log back in. We'll get this thing going in the rhythm. But if you have any questions that have come up in the meantime, this would be a good time to go ahead and drop them in there. And I'm sure I'll have Gary back online here in a minute. Hey, feel free to ask me any questions right now while we're killing some time. There's 70 of you guys on here live. So if any questions about marketing lead generation, we'll fill some time until Gary gets back here. I'm sure he'll be back any second. Thank you guys for your patience as we roll through this here. But yeah, we got a lot of people on here. Yep, California's having some bad weather. I'm having some bad weather here in Idaho too. So maybe hopefully we'll get them back online here in a second. But I can totally see the West Coast is getting pretty pummeled with some rain. And we have some pretty high winds up here. So I'm be interested to see if Gary's been impacted with that right now. So let me see how I can keep you guys entertained. Um, I think one of the things that I'll just kind of tie into with Gary in the search quality thing, and we'll probably get to this, but one of the things where I stand with the lead generation is one of the things that it makes it possible for you to really kind of have that search quality be a priority for you is being able to have enough demand for client generation. So you can get enough clients coming your way so you can make the case of why, hey, I'm good with saying no to that client. Because I know have another client coming in the pipeline. So um, let's see. I got a couple questions in there. So where in Idaho? I live in Hidden Springs. So it's just outside of Boise, up in the foothills. The Wolf Pack, shoot, the Wolf Pack. We're having it's a good year. Thanks for asking that, Anthony. We obviously going through a little bit of a rebuild with the program, but everyone's bought in. I love Coach Cho. I think he's the right guy for the job. We had a close one against Boise State a couple weeks ago, playing Air Force this weekend. So I'll be flying out for that on Friday. So I'm fired up for that. Great question, Kat. Thank you for asking that. What software to use for BD? I love Talon. Talon's a great tool. I can drop that in the comments here in a second. But Talon's a phenomenal tool that I use. I recommend Create for a CRM and ATS. Those two can talk and tie in together. For those of you that are just kind of hopping on live, waiting to look and see for Gary, Gary was here. We've had some technical challenges, haven't heard from him yet, but I'm sure he'll be back online. So I'm just doing my best job to keep you guys entertained. And thank you for asking the questions. Since you're here, let's make this valuable for all of you in here. Yes, Hope, I can. This will be this link here will be. This link here will be live in a minute on YouTube, actually. So if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll find it. And then actually the link where you're watching this on LinkedIn, it'll still be there once it's all said and done. So you can share that out with the team. It will be on my podcast next week, the actual podcast channel, The Relevant Recruiter Show. Just got a text from Gary. He is going to be back in here in a minute. So we should be good. Thank you guys for your patience and hanging with me here. We'll get this thing back live and get you guys listening to Gary instead of me scrambling to keep you guys entertained. So thank you for the questions. Thomas, 62 and sunny here in Los Angeles. A little bit jealous there. Speaking of pummeling, prospective clients are inundated with messages from search firm owners. Yeah, good question. It just came up as a LinkedIn user. I'm not exactly sure who I'm talking to here, but questions about marketing messages to hiring executives and TA. Here's the thing. Don't connect and pitch. That's the number one thing. Don't connect and try to sell. If you do that, you're just going to sound like everybody else in the marketplace. And then consider other mediums of delivery, whether it's voice notes or video notes. Thank you, Gary. He's back. I'm just over here rambling.
Thank you for tap dancing.
We've got a great audience, man. We've got 75 people here. They all hung around waiting for you to get back on this thing. So we will go. Got a lot of really good. Oh, Kevin Grimes. Yep. Okay, cool. I know Grimes. He was just after I played there. So anyways, back onto the topic, Gary.
Yeah.
I don't even know where we left off because I've been just doing so much rambling here.
Yeah. I was on a roll, but I think
you were killing it there. So let's get this thing back dialed in. So why do you think going into the search quality, like why is it crucial for recruiters to focus on working with good clients? Like, why do you think that is so important?
Yeah. So think about it this way. If you work on contingency, how many searches that you work do you actually fill? And the answer is less than 30% for almost everyone, right? So the other way to look at that is 70% of your time is spent on stuff that doesn't pay you any money. So if you think about any other business, if I said 70% of your time is spent on things that don't produce revenue, you would say you got to fix that system. You got to up those odds, right? So that it's really so that you are working on high probability searches with serious people. And if you want to simplify, how do you really make this work? I work with clients who want the deal to happen more than I do. Let's say that's my criteria. I want to work with clients who want the deal to happen more than I do. Do they exist? Maybe not, right? But that's the true north. That's what I'm shooting for. I want to work with
Right.
people who are serious and who really want this thing to happen and who will allow me to do my job and to do what I can do for them. So I look at it as, time is a non-renewable resource. And one way to think about it is that your time is your life. How you spend your time is how you spend your life. So do you
Right.
want to spend 70% of your life working on things that go nowhere? And the answer, I'm sure, for everybody is no, right? So the real question is, what do I do about it? And one of the things that I want everyone to think about is installing what I would call firewalls. So like a firewall if a forest fire is out of control, you guys know you build a wall, the fire's coming, it hits that wall and it doesn't spread any further. So in our case, what is the fire? The fire is people jerking me around, wasting my time, not returning my phone call, going dark on me when I've spent a week working on something. I started out as contingency. I did that for 4 years, I believe, around 4 years. And at a certain point, I became allergic to people wasting my time. I was just like, I can't do this. It doesn't work for me.
Right.
So I switched my model from contingency to a hybrid model, which was about 70% retained, 30% contingency. But I also changed the criteria for who I would work with on contingency. And for most of you, if you're working contingency, I'm not saying stop working contingency. I'm saying get much more deliberate and mindful about who you're spending time with. And I'm not sure what you guys heard when I got cut off there, but what I was saying is tell the truth. If the hair on the back of your neck stands up and you go, oh, that sounds, I don't know if I'm going to work on that. Or, wow, that salary is way too low. Or, gosh, this guy's not returning my call very quickly. Tell the truth about what's happening. Tell the truth about what you're seeing. I use the analogy of the lawnmower, but there's many, many stories I can tell you guys about that illustrate this, but they're all kind of around the same thing, which is becoming much more conscious about how you spend your time.
Right. Right. What kind of red flags, before the search? Is there any kind of, you've kind of given a couple of indicators, like if it kind of like basically if it smells like shit, it might be shit, type of
Right.
thing. But like,
Right.
what are the indicators that you see from clients that typically kind of scream like, I don't know if this is going to be a good one?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say if a deal is going to blow up, I want to be the one to detonate it, and I want to detonate it early. So
Right.
what happens a lot of the time, my wife's checking on me. We're all good with the Wi-Fi. I had to give her the thumbs up out the window. But basically, if you, gosh, what was your question?
Just about, great. Now I forgot the question.
It was a good one. But I think what I was saying is, you really want to tell the truth when the hair on the back of your neck stands up. And the way that you can, I know what I was saying. I was saying if a deal is going to blow up, I want to be the one to detonate it, and I want to detonate it early. So
Right.
it's sort of the opposite of what most recruiters are doing. Most recruiters are going, I hope he doesn't. I hope he doesn't. I hope this just goes through, and I hope he doesn't hire someone from someone else. Or I hope this candidate is serious, even though they're not returning my calls promptly. So what I'm saying is, address these questions before you spend any time. The simplest thing is to pre-close, right? You pre-close issues in advance so that when they go down the way you want them to. And part of our job, if you were working for me, Donnie, I would say it is your job to cover this stuff. And if you don't cover this stuff, you're not going to get fired, but I mean, you're not doing the job that you've been hired to
Right.
do. So what do I mean by that? Here's the criteria. Timely feedback, which is a return call or email within 24 hours. It's not a hard rule, it's a guideline. We work with people, however, but let's just start there. Timely feedback, direct hiring authority contact. We're the ones who present the offer, not you. You're going to have to work with us and sell the position. You're also on the team. If you want people, you can't sit back there going, dazzle me. What do you got for me today? It's like, no, I'm going to tell you how to work with this candidate because these are rock star candidates we're going to be sending to you. And if you want options, you've got to put your salesperson hat on. So it's just being able to have this kind of dialogue with people. And then based on what their answers are, I'll decide how much time I'm going to invest. And I'll be honest with them. So I might say, if you were my prospect, Donnie, I'd say, Donnie, based on what you're telling me, it sounds like you'd like to find somebody, but there's just not a lot of urgency right now. So what I would say is I can keep an awareness of the search, but I can't put it at the top of my priority list right now. If that shifts for you, please keep me informed, and I'd be happy to put it at the top of my priority list, right?
Yep.
Or the other way is if somebody says you have to talk to HR, or we only pay 18% or whatever it is. One thing that I like to frame it as, I don't want to come across as if it's me dictating my rules and they either obey my rules or they're gone. That's not at all how it comes across. And that's not
Right.
even how I think of it. I think of it as, if you were my prospect, Donnie, I'd say, Donnie, I want you at the top of my priority list. I want you to get the best service from myself and my team. I want my research team excited about your search. And I know we can be successful. But right now, I feel like my hands are tied. My hands are tied because feedback is too slow. These candidates are going to go dark on us, or we're not able to meet with the decision maker. And so help me out here. What would be the best path forward? Should we just deprioritize your search, or is there a way to get, agreement on this? So it's just working with them and talking to them, but being honest about where you stand,
Yep. Well, and I think one of the things, and guys, I see the questions over here. I will definitely get to them. I appreciate a lot of interaction coming in this way, Gary. So we got a good topic coming on right here. But one of the things is, like, I think that people, obviously some of the language you're speaking is going to make people feel uncomfortable. Like, I have to kind of collide with my hiring leader, but I know the opposite is true. Can you kind of speak to that a little bit about, like, actually when you say this, you're actually attracting them more to you rather than, because you're creating more value around yourself, right?
Yeah.
Nobody else is speaking into this way.
Yeah, for sure. And it, again, I want to make sure to be clear. I'm not talking about being. You'll hear sometimes where people, I've heard this from trainers, where they're like, "You got to sign the agreement within this time, and we make the offer," and they just present it as these rules. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying covering the uncomfortable things up front before you lift a finger to decide whether it's worth it, and then telling them the truth about that. And one of the things you can think about is, there was a class that I did where I taught this exact thing. And I brought the quote because I don't want to screw it up. So let me just read you a portion of it. This is from a woman who was on the call with me. And she said, "Gary, after I got off the seminar with you on Tuesday, I took your advice and sent one of my managers an email telling him I need more timely feedback. He sent me an email back thanking me for sending him a, quote, in your face email," which is not really what I advised, but whatever. I immediately got 3 interviews for those candidates that had been sitting for 2 weeks or whatever it was. That was instantaneous. And what happens is, people see you the way that you're presenting yourself. So whatever you're feeling internally, it's going to ooze out of you. And so if you care about them, if you're an honest person, and if you have standards and you're an expert at what you do, that's going to come across, and people are going to pick up on it and go, "Oh, I treat all these other recruiters like shit, but when I talk to Donnie, I've got to sit up straight in my chair and I've got to be prepared because he's a professional." And then who is it that you're going to actually listen to? And when it comes to, if there's an economic downturn, you've got one recruiter who tells you the truth and talks to you, and doesn't, there's so many analogies I can think of, but I want to stick to the topic. But, if you had to cut one of your recruiters, you're not going to cut the guy who tells you the truth, who has done great work for you and who you perceive to be of higher value. You're going to cut the ones who are just nodding their head and going along with everything you say and taking orders and never pushing back. That's who you're going to cut, because they're just a commodity. They're totally replaceable. Someone who tells you the truth is not replaceable. Very few people who will do that. So,
yeah. What do you feel like is the biggest mindset hurdle that you have to help people? Like, you've coached so many people on doing this. So, like, is there a common hurdle that somebody has to come through? Because I know this is, there's tactics we can talk about, but, like, a lot of this is just, you said the internal, what it shows up and oozes. So is there a specific mindset shift for a lot of people?
Yes, that's a great point. And, like James Clear says, that true identity change, or true behavior change, I should say, is really identity change. And this starts internally. When I started, I would go on client meetings. I had an ill-fitting suit. I was nervous as hell and just sat there and toughed out, meetings with clients. I was not comfortable at all. So I had to work on myself a lot. This is over a period of years. But part of it for me was the tipping point, like I said, was just having clients pull the rug out from under me so many times that I just couldn't take it. I was like, this, just because I value my time. But I do believe it is an identity shift. And one of the ways to think about that is, and it's so funny, I just had a conversation with one of my clients. She might be here, I'm not sure. But we just had this conversation where I said, do you see yourself as a peer of the hiring managers that you work for? And I could tell she was uncomfortable. She was like, well, yeah, but blah, blah, blah. And the thing is, if you don't see yourself as their peer, then you're always going to be in this kind of order taker
Yeah,
situation.
you put that. A lot of people put them on a pedestal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and you
yeah,
cannot do that. You gotta at least fake it until you become it, because you'll metabolize it eventually, but you're gonna have to fake it for a while, and that's okay. I had to fake it too. But it's kind of like if I said to you, Donnie, do you work out? And you go, yeah, yeah, I go to the gym like 3 days a week, and I do some cardio or whatever. That's very different than you responding and saying, yes, I'm an athlete. I care. I'm a football player, and I practice and I do all these other activities. I see myself as an athlete. Once you metabolize that identity shift, I'm not a guy who works out. I'm an athlete. Or
right,
I'm not a guy who works out. I'm a martial artist. If I identify, I'm a martial artist, or I'm a yoga practitioner, or whatever it is. I'm a headhunter. I'm an executive recruiter. Um, when you metabolize that properly, it you don't it becomes like it's like a thought virus that gets in there, and
right.
it just reprograms a lot of things. So I think it's an identity shift from I'm somebody who takes orders from other people and I'm hoping they don't fire me, to no, I'm a professional. This is what I do for a living. I know a lot more about getting people hired than hiring authorities who have much other important things. This is just one of many things they do. So
Right.
it's that internal identity shift,
Yeah, I love that.
which, yeah, it doesn't happen overnight, but it is super important.
Yeah, yeah, I would imagine that has to be a big part of it because, like you're saying, like to start off with, right, is like you're almost like an abused kid. That's like
Yeah,
you got to make some shifts inside to
yeah,
see yourself differently, essentially, to make this win.
yeah.
So, kind of go tactical, strategic. Like, what are some strategies recruiters can use to elevate whether a client, or attract clients that truly value their partnership?
Yeah, yeah. One of the things is something that you help people with, which is having a robust enough marketing calendar. Because some of this, I'm talking about the PTSD, like, oh, I see myself as less than. Many of people listening maybe don't feel that way, but they
Right,
still have an issue with this, right?
right,
So what I'm thinking about that is you've got to have some firewalls that you install yourself in order to prevent the fire from spreading. In this case, your time being wasted. So I'll give you some examples. Pre-closing, like I said, you can pre-close a bunch of the sticking point issues. You could, my favorite way, the best way, in my opinion, for contingency search is to get interview times in advance. And the reason for that is it asks your client to pull out their calendar and to carve out, let's just say today is Wednesday. So let's just pretend I'm talking to you and I'm taking the search assignment. Maybe we've never worked together before. And I'll say to you, Donnie, I'm excited about this. I think we can do a great job for you. One of the things that will motivate myself and my team to put this at the top of our priority list is if you can pull out your calendar and carve out 3 hours where you're going to make yourself available to interview our candidates that we're going to spend the next week working on for you. And what that'll look like is you give me 3 time slots that work for you, say next Tuesday or whatever it is. If we're not successful in finding candidates to fill those slots, I'm going to let you know 24 hours before so you can clear your calendar. But what it will do, as I said, is it will turn up the heat on the motivation. And I'll just be honest, listen, we've got a lot of searches and we've got a lot of companies that want us to work with them. If we're working with you on contingency, we're not getting paid unless we actually hire someone. So part of our criteria is to work with people who are partners and who see
right,
it as a partnership. So the cool thing about interview times in advance is it has all of these benefits. Number one, if somebody will pull out their calendar and carve out 3 hours, it's not as good as a retainer, right? If they're going to pay you, that's the best. So of all the firewalls you can install, getting paid up front is the best. Just
right,
no way around that. Second best, in my opinion, though, is interview times in advance, because what do people care about? They care about money and they care about time. So you're not getting the money, but you are getting the time. If they say they'll do that. So not every client is going to do this. And
right,
probably people listening are thinking, oh, I don't know, they might not like that. It's just one of many ways that you can test the search, basically. But I
right.
will tell a story. There's one person that I've interviewed several times in our roundtable program. She's a 7-figure producer, extremely successful woman. And the first time I interviewed her, I said, so what are you, it's kind of the same question you asked me. I said, what is your criteria for working with someone, with a client? And she said, I just have 2 criteria. Number one, they pay me up front. or number two, they give me interview times in advance. And I said, okay, so what if somebody says, no, I'm not going to pay you up front, and no, I don't really want to do that. Just send me your stuff, you know? And she said, I won't work with them. And I said, so if it's a great client, great search, et cetera, and they won't pull out their calendar and do that, you won't work with them? And she said, no, I will not. Which I thought was like, whoa, okay. Because I don't have that hard and fast rule. To me, it's like I said, one of many. There could be reasons they can't schedule or whatever. But if you think about it, I said more than 70% of contingency searches go unfilled. Whereas with this person that I'm describing, she's either getting paid up front or she's getting interview times in advance. So what percentage of her searches get filled?
Right.
It's huge. Her percent, 70% plus do get filled, right? So her time is really well spent. So that's what I'm talking about. The power of this can literally transform your entire company if you install this. So it's, you got to get rid of the previous thought virus, which is I'm an order taker, I do what they say, I don't question things, I don't confront. And you got to reinstall this new thought virus, which is, yeah, I take myself seriously and I work with serious people.
Right.
You know?
Love it. We are with Gary Stauble here live talking about being ruthless with search quality. If you guys are enjoying this, go tap that like button, react button, you know, the support button, something like that. Get into some questions from the audience here. What do you do, Gary, when clients don't listen to you about compensation?
About compensation, everything is a negotiation, right? So it's more about, the only thing I can control is that I'm going to give my opinion. I'm going to do my best to say why it's true. If I'm assuming the person means, you know, we're paying 170 for this position, but I think it's worth 190.
Yeah.
Everything is the trainer back when I started, he used to say, you could think of the song "The Gambler" by Kenny Rogers as a really good one for our business, particularly contingency. Got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, know when to run away, right? So that's what it is. And if you're stuck on a bad retained search, that's a totally different thing. But if we're talking about contingency, and let's say I've been working with them and we're finding that people just are not excited about the salary range, then I'm going to tell them the truth. I'm going to say, listen, you know, we're not getting interest at this level. You guys are paying less than the rest of your competitors. Here's what's going on. If they will lower the requirements, maybe we could get somebody at a lower salary. So it's just a negotiation. But if they're really stubborn and they're not cooperative, then you just deprioritize their search. But the only caveat there is, like I mentioned in the beginning, is I would tell them you're deprioritizing. Because what I don't like, and when I talk to clients, I will hear that story. And I think I was saying this right before I got cut off with the connectivity. But the thing that I hear over and over and over, and the reason I make such a big deal about this one strategy, is from my clients, they'll say, yeah, I was working on the search. It was going really well. Client seemed interested. Everything is slowed down now. So I'm not even working on it. And I always say the same thing to them. Did you tell the client that you're not working on it? And they usually will say, no, I'm just not working on it. And I'll say, well, you're missing the biggest opportunity. The opportunity is to see whether this client could be a great client, because right now they don't know why you're not producing. Right. They don't even know that you're not working on it. You've left the impression that, okay, I'll be on this, you know, I'll get back to you. And now you've moved on to something else. So it's like the worst of all worlds. They're evaluating you as being a shitty recruiter because you're not sending them people. They're assuming you're doing something you're not. And they're also not learning that they cannot treat recruiters this way.
Right.
So so just tell them what's happening and frame it in their point of view. Again, I want you at the top of my priority list. I want to give you the best service possible, but here's what I need to do my job.
What's in it for them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What's in it for them for everything. Yeah.
Yep. Another question was, do you put the timely feedback requirement in your agreement?
Yes, I do. I have a timely feedback agreement inside the agreement, and the language is basically, I don't have it memorized, but it's 48 hours. So I don't put, I try to put a number so that it's specific. If somebody says I need 72 hours, it's not a matter of, again, sticking to a rule. I want to cover these things in advance so that when they go down, I've got some coverage and we've had this discussion. So yes, I do put that in the agreement. In my case, I'll put it as a 48-hour return message, and just tell them we do that because we don't want to lose candidates that you guys want to find. And the best people are going to move quickly and they're going to get scooped up elsewhere, you know?
Yep. Okay. So another good question that came in. I've got a couple of good guys, so keep them coming. I'm going to get to you guys. How do you compete with the clients that say they want to do the recruitment themselves? Is that something that you spend a lot of time on, or do you have a formula to kind of flip them and let them know the value, or is it just kind of like, hey, let me find somebody who's actually interested?
Yeah. Everything, you know, it depends. With all objections, you never know whether what they're telling you is the truth or whether it's just a way to change the conversation. So I would want to uncover the truth first. And if they really are seeing great candidates on their own, you always have a value proposition on contingency, which is, why don't you compare the people we come up with to the ones that you're seeing? There's no charge for that, right? So I would at least do that initially. The other thing you can do, and this is maybe a little off topic, but let's say you were pitching a retainer, or I like the language of a deposit or a down payment. So if you're not using that word, and we can call it an engagement fee, a small engagement fee, and you pitch that and they say, no, we're working on it on our own. There's nothing stopping you from saying, if you have some candidates in process right now, you can put those in, we'll put their names in the contract. And if you fill it, either A, you don't pay us, or B, we will credit you that retained amount on your next search. So maybe you paid me a $10,000 deposit, you end up filling it on your own because you want the freedom to do this. Is kind of a side adventure here, but you want the option to recruit on your own. If you do find somebody, then that $10,000 deposit is an advance on the next time we work with you. So you're not losing it, but we're also not losing it, you know, because we're putting
Right.
our skin in the game, you know?
Like it. I like it. I've got a long one here, so bear with me on this one. So,
Okay.
if so, having worked primarily in contingent roles for several years with occasional small engagement fees, I've toyed with the idea of a hybrid model. Billable hours followed by a reduced direct hire fee, example 10%, after placement, creating a shared risk skin in the game structure. Essentially integrating the engagement fee into the initial hourly arrangement. I've tried it, and while it has worked, um, of a massively low 3% fee. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Aaron, but that's kind of the basics of the framework. I don't know what the question is, so to speak, but I think maybe just
I
validation
like
on the model.
I
But
like hybrid models. I
yeah,
think I'm not so sure about that one, but one that maybe is similar would be like a rolling retainer. You know, if somebody says I'm going to hire 12 people in the next 12 months, you could create a rolling retainer where they pay you a certain amount per month, and then that amount is subtracted from fees that are actually charged. So, for instance, if you're paying me 10,000 a month and I close a $30,000 deal, I'm going to invoice you for 20K that month because you've already
yep,
paid me 10. You know, so that's a really good one. I do know some people who do the hourly version. The only problem with the hourly is it now pigeons you into trading time for money. So there's an hourly, there's going to be
right.
a governor on your ability to earn, and your fees are going to be much lower. Having said that, I've worked with a couple of clients over the years who like that model because of the stability. So part
Right,
of it is a risk assessment for you. If you want more
right.
stability, maybe that's a good one. If you want more upside, then I wouldn't want to be stuck with the hourly aspect,
Yeah,
you know?
I like to charge based off the value and the impact I deliver rather than
Yeah,
my time. Yeah.
exactly.
A couple questions about recording. Yes, this is recorded. You can access this on my YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and Donnie Gupton, and this is actually streaming live there now, and it will show up as a recording there. So you guys will be able to see that. Of course, if you don't find that, feel free to reach out to me or Gary. We'll get it to you. Going down into the questions here. All right. So curious, since Donnie's marketer, what is a productive way to convey this type of process to clients in your marketing materials, either publicly or direct emails? Other methods of strong approach could be, we only work on retained or flavor. Yeah, let me dive into that. But I'm curious, Gary, since this is your topic, what do you do, or what do you teach from like marketing positioning and kind of how they approach the market to get the call to be able to, then sell them
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a million things we could talk about: your web presence, your social media presence, all those things. One of the things to think about, though, that's kind of like the iceberg under the water a lot of the time, is if you do everything else right and you get to that sales call, but the way you present yourself on that sales call doesn't um, help them to trust you, then it doesn't really matter what else you have going on. So it's not even so much that you're not going to communicate this stuff, before you talk to somebody. It's really
Right.
when you've gotten to the point where you've done some discovery with them, and you've gotten to the point in the call where now you're talking about the trade-offs of working with you, or what's required to work with you. Um, and I think how you come across is really, really important. And it is, if you broke down charisma into three categories, it would be presence, power, and warmth, right? So, and you might over-index on any one of those. Let's say Colin Powell would be, it's very strong power. He's a 5-star general. He commands a certain. But if you listen to Colin Powell talk, he has a certain way of talking that is very different than other people.
Right.
And one example that I use is if you think of a judge delivering a verdict. If a judge comes out and he sits down in his thing and he's delivering a verdict and he says, "This case is closed." You're not really gonna
You're not sold on that one.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you want him to say this case is closed. You want
Right.
to feel that is closed. So I would say, work on your ability to present yourself. And if you want a shortcut, the best book that I know of for this is called The Charisma Myth. The Charisma Myth. But there's a lot of interesting studies that are outlined in that book, and what it basically says is that people hire people that they are impressed with from these other areas like presence, power, warmth, more so than your credentials, more so than the pedigree, more so than almost anything, after you meet a certain basic level of criteria. So I would say one way to stand out is to work on how you present yourself, how you sound, and really think of those sales calls as discovery, where 70 or 80% of the time you're asking great quality questions, which takes a lot of pressure off of you. It's only the 20% at the end when now you're going to say these are the trade-offs that we need. And trade-off is really too strong of a word. This is the other way. We're talking about the identity change and the mind shift. I'm going to call this basic, common human courtesy. When you say I need a return call within 24 hours because I'm working out here for free for you, that's just polite behavior. This is nothing. We're not asking them to do anything really. Just
Right.
return a phone call as I work out here for free. So part of it, I would say, is also seeing just this is very basic stuff. This isn't
Right.
even getting to a level of becoming good as a salesperson or anything. This is just like, to get on the playing field, you got to have
Yep.
cleats or what. I mean, it's just kind of, yeah, it's that mind
Yep.
shift in the beginning.
Yeah. And just kind of to piggyback on that, Bill, from the marketing side, I mean, I think that what Gary's saying in terms of the charisma, so to speak, is like the authoritative presence within my digital presence online can attract more people. And I would agree with Gary, there's not going to be like a set of words that I'm going to say online that are going to do that, more about how I show up online. But I think if you do look tactical, it's really establishing yourself as a leader. And so my ideas would be like, okay, well, what are the pains, problems, frustrations, challenges that these hiring leaders have that I can basically tie back into having a more committed recruiting partner solve some of those challenges, right? So when you look at it from a standpoint of like some of the objections that Gary is bringing up that you can handle through the calls, is like, well, I'm going to create content that speak to that right away, so they can see right away now that I'm a little bit different in the marketplace. And then I think the other thing is actually sharing and showcasing your track record of success of how you've done this. So, I recently just partnered and was retained by a renewable energy company and filled, 5 sales positions in 30 days. Here's what I did, right? So I'm going to share the story of success, how I approach the market differently. And then, once they get on the call, there's an alignment between how they're showing up with authoritative confidence online, and then they're going to show up with that same presence on the call. That's how it works for me very, very well, right? Is having a place where I can stand out and speak my mind powerfully online. And then when you get to the call, you're going to get a very similar experience. So that would be my 2 cents on the marketing side. There's obviously a rabbit hole we could run down with that, but that kind of same thing there, Nydia, that you just had. How do you set yourself apart from the competition, essentially? Any thoughts on that, Gary?
Well, once you get on a call, if you do what we've been talking about here, trust me, you will sound different, because you can probably guess 90% of recruiters are just saying, okay, okay, and they're taking all the information down, but they're never challenging. So that's part of it. but also the quality of the questions you ask,
Right.
in that conversation. So one of them that is one of my favorites I learned from Peter Lefkowitz years ago is to ask, let's frame it this way. Let's say I find an excellent candidate for you, Mr. Hiring Manager, and I present them to you. Walk me through your search process. What is step one? What is step two? What is step three? Who do they meet with? Who makes the final decision? Who's on the interview team? Right. So you go through that with them, and that's just one of many questions that you would ask. That one in particular is going to give you a lot of really useful information because, like a lot of, and I'm sure you guys know this, but when you ask a question, sometimes the follow up is the most important. Because in that case, if I ask that question, walk me through your search process or your hiring process. If they say, well, I'm the one, I make all the decisions and just send stuff to me and I'll take care of it. Okay, so I don't know whether he doesn't have a process, but he's pretending to, whether he's going to be difficult to work with because he's got a bad attitude, whether he hasn't even thought about who's going to meet with this person, versus somebody who says, well, I'm going to be the decision maker, but they're going to meet with Susan first, then they're going to meet with John. After that, we have a meeting. Generally, we're looking at about 72 hours for a decision. I mean, that'd be a dream client, but something where I feel like, yes, they have a search process. No, they don't have a search process, but they're honest about it. Or no, they don't have a search process, but they're pretending they do, which is going to make my job harder. So a lot of times it's the follow-up questions about digging into these things that absolutely will make you sound different. So if you're asking great questions, you're not really pitching, you're just being there to figure out whether you can provide a solution. And I'll tell you one other thing. When I started in the business, and it's not so much this way anymore, but when I started, it was like a lot of the pitches that people would make are, we're the best at what we do. We find the
Yeah.
best people. We're number one. And it's like, if
We
you
find
think of,
purple unicorns.
yeah, yeah. And some of that, makes sense, but some of it is like, if you met a person at a cocktail party and they said, I'm number one, I'm the best, I, do stuff that nobody else can, they're like, that guy's kind of a jerk,
Right.
So it lets you off the hook a little bit to say at the very beginning of the session, listen, I don't know whether or not we're the right firm for you, but if we take 20 minutes together, I'm sure we'll figure it out. If I'm not the right person, I'll do my best to refer you elsewhere. And either way, I'm going to be honest with you about whether or not I think I can help you. Just that little tiny bit of humility at the beginning of the session, or I want to let you know the purpose of the call isn't to try to get you to work with us when you don't need our services. It's really to figure out whether we have a match, and
Right.
we can go through some criteria. Again, just that alone sets you up differently than other people who might be heavy on the pitch side.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, again, it's all, summed up very short of like, stop being an order taker, just willing to take whatever role and start to qualify the search and be viewed as
Yeah.
a partner in the space.
Yeah.
One of the things when I was scrambling, when you went, when you went
Sorry
dark
about
on
that.
us there for a little bit, one of the things I was saying, and this is my opinion, I'd be really curious. We talked about it a little bit, but I feel like one of the underlying problems and challenges of people not being able to step in and truly do this is because they don't have enough demand followed up in the pipeline. So, hey, if I go, collide with this business owner and, kind of get this new sales strategy, and I don't have another one and I'm going to tell this person no, that's where I think a lot of the struggle is. But what are your thoughts on that? What's your opinion on that?
No, I'm so glad you mentioned that because that is absolutely spot on. So I never know quite how to articulate this, but I'm going to say it the best way that I can. You said it pretty well, but it's basically, there's a laziness factor here. You know what I mean? That I got 6, 7 search assignments. They're kind of mixed quality, but it fills up my calendar. I'm very busy, so I have this frenetic, like every time I come into the office, I'm like, I got all these searches to work on. One thing you can ask yourself is take a look at the searches you're working on right now and ask yourself how many of them have at least one interview scheduled, right? How many have at least one interview scheduled? To me, that would be another way. I said A, B, and C quality is one way of thinking about searches. When I first started in the business, one of the things that I heard was you don't even call it a search assignment until you schedule an interview. So right now you have a search lead. That means they gave you permission to work on it and they signed your agreement. It's not yet a bona fide search assignment. It becomes a bona fide search assignment when they schedule the first interview. That's just a criteria in your mind to parse out, which ones are of what quality. But the iceberg under the water here really is marketing, right? If you are marketing consistently and enough to where you're getting enough business in, you're going to have the swagger in your negotiations to just be honest with people.
Yep.
And when I say the lazy factor is, it's kind of like a cozy, warm blanket in a way that is like, well, I've got these searches, I'm really busy, so I'm going to just sort of pray that things work out. As opposed to it's harder to say, you know what, I do have 7 searches, but I got to be honest, 4 are crap. 4 just are crap. I shouldn't even be working on these. So the tough thing to do is spend way more time marketing and focusing on marketing so that I can begin to curate my client list. And the analogy I use with my clients on the phone is, think of crocodiles in the Serengeti, you know, at that time of the year when the wildebeest have to cross the little watering hole, or they have to get to the watering hole. And that watering hole, it's at the end of summer, the watering hole is shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And there's all these crocodiles in there. And you're just standing around and you're fighting over these scraps that are coming to the watering hole, but it keeps shrinking. That's sometimes what it feels like if you're sitting on these searches that are not that good, but you're watching it shrink and shrink and shrink, but you're not willing to go out and find another watering hole. And I think it is the willingness to market consistently and preferably on some type of a schedule, whether that's content creation, no matter what it is that you're doing, on some type of a schedule, because if you do that enough, it's so much easier to do everything else that I'm talking about.
Yeah, having good
but you gotta
routines
be sober about it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, love that. The really good question came in. I think it's kind of unique. So I've asked a client to be more responsive in a timely manner to our interviews and debriefs. However, he still takes sometimes weeks to get back to me, if he even does. However, I make over $100K a year with him. How would you approach this client right now?
I had one of those. So I had a client who I did over 6 figures with, who was a great client, like my best client. And then they basically became much more bureaucratic. They grew really fast. They got a lot more red tape, and everything is slowed down. I mean, listen, if you're making over 6 figures, you got to take care of that client, period, right? You got to take care of them no matter what. But you want to appeal, like Donnie mentioned before, why is it in their interest to do what you want them to do? And the truth is, in almost every case, it is in their interest to do the things, timely feedback. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole on that one, but I also study peak performance and flow theory.
Right.
Immediate feedback is a flow trigger. That means it puts you in a flow trigger. It means it gives you a dopamine hit, which just means free motivation and free energy. That's what a dopamine hit is. So the scenario that I would point you to is, think about this. If I'm working with a hiring authority and they say, and I say, listen, I need a return call within 24 hours because it helps us to keep your search moving at full speed. And he says, well, I don't know, I'll do the best I can, whatever. When you hang up the phone, what happens to your motivation level with that person? Like, you can feel that. If they're just like this, like, don't call us, we'll call you, let us know, send your resumes. You will feel, when you hang up the phone, you're going to feel like, I don't even want to work on that. Versus a client who you call and you say, hey, what happened with the candidate you guys talked to? And he says, listen, the guy was off target, but he was really close. Here's what I liked about him. He had this, this, and this. What he didn't have was enough of this. But we're really in a hurry to get this thing filled. I know you've done great work for us before. Get out there and keep working on it because we really need this filled. You hang up the phone and you're like, okay, let's go. We got close, but we can do it. And your motivation skyrockets. I'm saying, be honest, you can have that conversation with your client. Listen, we want to do the best we can for you, but I feel like we're losing stuff. We're losing great candidates who just go by the wayside. They're not going to be sitting around waiting. I don't want to see that happen. How can we work on this together? And that's why I said it's not a rule like you must call me within 24 hours. Somebody may say that's impossible. I travel, or I've got kids, or who knows. So we just negotiate it together. We just figure it out and hopefully come up with a schedule that works. The other thing I would say is, think about having a calendar-driven approach. So what that means is, when you're on the phone with your client, or if you're on the phone with your client, schedule the next call while you're on the phone. Don't say, I'll send you an email. Don't do anything. Don't send a calendar, but just say, let's talk in 5 days. I'm going to give you an update on where we're at, and you can tell me what's going on for you. Right. It'll be a 5-minute phone call. Let's put it in our calendars right now. So every time you're about to hang up, schedule the next call. 5 days from now, 7, whatever it is, some type of a status meeting. Since you've got them on the phone, get it in their calendar.
Yeah.
That will help a lot. But yeah,
the thing I really love, Gary, that, and I hope you guys are all kind of taking this away, is how every kind of rebuttal that you have back, you're tying it back to them. So it's not like, hey, you're wasting my time, da 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 da. It's like, hey, we're missing out on quality candidates. I don't want to see that happen to you guys. How do we, I think that language is so powerful, because it's like you're hitting them back. You're saying, hey, this isn't good enough. This relationship isn't good enough, but I'm not making it about me. I'm making it about your outcomes that you desire, not the ones that I desire. I mean, we should both desire the same things, but yeah, I love that. Great question, Frank. Thank you for that. We're almost wrapping up here, guys. So if you have any last questions, feel free to go in the comments. I'll try to get to them. Before I ask this question, is there anything that you want to dive into? Is there anything specifically that we haven't covered yet, you think, that you
let me look at my cheat sheet? No, I think I've, sometimes I feel like I'm beating a dead horse on this, but it's because I hear how much grief and pain and misery that not doing what I'm talking about causes. And also, I would just say, if you don't do what I'm talking about, you have to know you're leaving at least 6 figures on the table every year, and you're stressed and you're working extra hours. So if you want to be less stressed, work less hours, work with cool people who value your time, then just become more deliberate about what we've been talking about.
Yeah. Well, I think that, you can pride yourself on being busy, or you can pride yourself on making money, and your model definitely serves the making money. So, what's one piece of advice you wish recruiters, would take to heart when it comes to search quality and client relationships? Like, if you were to sum it up to one thing, like, what's one thing? It's like,
I would say, your pipeline is your destiny in a way. That sounds kind of a bit much, but I would say your pipeline is really the thing that tells you the health of your desk at any given moment. And so this might be a bit of a rabbit hole, but there's a guy I've interviewed in our program who has a method called 5 Alive plus 10 in process. It's a very simple system. It's what we integrate into our coaching as well at the Recruiting Lab. And that is, you want to have 5 interviews and 5 submittals at any given time. So that's kind of your true north. If you've got that happening, it's pretty hard to not realize where you are if you've got that as a true north. So just keep that front and center,
Love it. Now, thank you, Gary. This was awesome. Great interaction from the audience today. You have a killer deal. So go ahead and share. Gary's got a special offer for you guys right now.
2 things that you guys can do. If you want to learn more, you can go to my website, therecruitinglab.com. There is a free report on there called 7 Strategies for Eliminating Roller Coaster Revenue. So if you're tired of the lack of predictability in your business and in your production, check that out. It's free of charge. It's on my homepage at therecruitinglab.com. If you're interested in a coaching program, we do have a special that just launched today, early access for our Black Friday sale. It's 50% off our flagship coaching program, and you can learn all about that at therecruitinglab.com.
Beautiful. Gary, thank you. If they're not into therecruitinglab.com, where should they connect with you? If they're not into that right now, where's
LinkedIn? Go? Send me a message or follow me on LinkedIn. I post stuff with Donnie's help. I've been posting stuff every day that are productivity tips, strategies, kind of like what you've heard today, but just little small bites every single day on LinkedIn. So if nothing else, follow me there and we'll be able to stay in touch.
Yep. Check out Gary's content on LinkedIn. He's been working with us at Aura. It's been awesome to see him put the brand out there. Thank you guys for being here today. Appreciate all the participation. This was an awesome show. Again, Gary, thank you. So much value. I learned a ton here sitting in this seat and interviewing you. So I appreciate you coming and taking the time. We will be off next week for Thanksgiving, and then we'll be back to close out the 4th quarter. I'm about to head over to the Crelate training right now. So if you guys haven't signed up for that, reach out to me. I'll get you the link. You guys can hop over there. I'll be talking more about inbound leads, and I start in about 30 minutes. So I've got a busy day. Gary, thank you. I appreciate you, man. This was awesome.
You bet.
And those of you that are here still, go ahead and tap that like button, love button, give Gary some love. We'd appreciate it. And that allows more people to see